Last year, I witnessed something that changed the way I think about our world. It was 4 a.m. and my girlfriend and I were driving on the Kansas side of the Kansas-Colorado border. Nobody was around, just our car and miles of flat, empty road. It looked something like this. Visibility out there is crazy far, and the night was absolutely cloudless. I'm driving, and out of nowhere, in the top of the sky and to my slight left, I see a light. 10 times brighter and 5 times bigger than any star. No light distortion, the kind that you see around a lamppost. Just pure, circular light. The instant I saw this light, it took off. Within a tenth of a second, it traveled across the night sky and over the horizon. This light that I had just seen had no tail, like a comet, had made no sound, even though I could tell from where I was that this thing was within the atmosphere. And the other thing that I could tell was that it was going multitudes of speeds faster than anything else that I had ever seen before. And yet, no sound. Then, I slammed on the brakes. What happened next is even stranger, but we'll get to that later. That event got me thinking that a conspiracy is just that, a conspiracy theory, until it isn't. The second the truth of a conspiracy theory grabs you, shakes you, makes you look at it in the eye, your world can change. And we know from history, if everyone sees the truth, the whole world can change. For better, for worse, you don't really have that choice. Except for today. Because I've decided to go through caverns of content and the recesses of lore to bring you what I believe are the 7 best conspiracy theories, the ones that I actually want to be true. Now wait, ghost you can't see. Why are you an expert? Well, like I said before, I'm a witness, and I'll finish that story. But second, I've been laughed at about aliens and conspiracy theories for years. Back in law school, I literally wrote a paper about how the FAA needed to incorporate better reporting standards for UFOs for both civilian and military pilots. I got a B on that paper. And like a month later, my idea was in Congress, people were talking about it. I'm not taking credit for it, but So today, I'll be ranking each of these 7 theories on 3 criteria, each of those on a scale of 1 to 10 for a total score of 30. The criteria are likelihood score, and I hope to find at least one solid piece of evidence that gives me hope that that theory is true. Second, the cool factor. Basically, how interesting would this be if the world found out it was real? And then finally, an upheaval ranking. How different would society be tomorrow everybody woke up and that theory turned out to be true? Now, in case you haven't figured this out, this is the first video on this channel. So if you like what you're seeing so far, subscribe. It would obviously help a lot. And a couple of quick things. If you're looking for really thorough deep dives and content like that, it's coming. With this first video, I thought, let's just have some fun. So with that, let's get into it. Kicking off the list, number 7, water-powered cars. It's a certified YouTube classic and a pet project for wacky dreamer scientists for decades. Most notably, of course, is Stanley Meyer, who supposedly in the 1980s created a water-operated fuel cell for his dune buggy. His claim was that 22 gallons of water was all that was necessary for a complete trip from Los Angeles to New York City. He backed his claim up with patents, but here's the catch, which unfortunately, there always seems to be. Those patents, which are now publicly available, prove literally nothing. See, Meyer claimed his water fuel cell injector used electrolysis, except unlike conventional electrolysis, which used pure H2O and tons of energy, his device could run on small amounts of ordinary tap water. Why wasn't this accurately reflected in those patents? According to Meyer, he couldn't trust the government enough to include the detailed plans publicly. Apparently, his other inventions had become victim to top secret classification under the Patent Secrecy Act. But like any hero, the government wasn't going to stop Stanley Meyer. He drove his water-powered buggy in public, got it all over the news, showed it off to engineers, and even got Belgian investors to come meet with him in the US. Which is why today, I'm happy to report we all have sick, water-powered dune buggies. Yeah, those investors killed him. Maybe. In 1998, Meyer, his brother, also named Meyer, and two Belgian investors went out to eat to discuss the framework of a multi-million-dollar deal surrounding his water-powered fuel cell. Minutes later, Stanley Meyer rose to his feet, became violently ill, and ran vomiting into the parking lot where he collapsed. His last words, "They poisoned me." His death report blamed it on high blood pressure and a brain aneurysm, and that's the story. And here's the ranking. Likelihood, I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 10. Now, there's precedent for novel scientists dying mysteriously. And the Patent Secrecy Act, it's real. And that mayor seemed himself like a competent backyard scientist lends credit to the possibility of his discovery. But the sheer scientific probability of someone creating breakthrough electrolysis, never to be replicated again from what we know, it's difficult to believe, but not completely impossible. Cool ranking, 3 out of 10. Now, don't get me wrong, this is cool, but I'm comparing this to other things on the list, and compared to what's coming, 3 out of 10. Finally, the upheaval score. Now, here's where Stanley Meyer and his water-powered fuel cell really get some points. 6.5 out of 10. Does religion, our place in the universe, philosophy change if tomorrow we wake up and another backyard scientist in Ohio has replicated Stanley Meyer's water fuel cell injector? No. But the effects would be real in other places. I'm looking at you, Saudi Arabia. Total score, 12.5 out of 30. All right, now we're getting into it. Number 6, the moon landing never happened. You've all heard this one before. Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing. Don't worry, I'm not about to go off about how the moon landing is a hoax because the flag didn't wave and the lighting was off. But maybe. But when I was making this list, I realized that I really hope we didn't actually go to the moon in 1969. Because if we did go, we stopped going back. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of the reasons why we stopped going back to the moon. And why NASA seems to be committed to covering that up. Here's the official narrative on this one. We sent 3 extremely qualified astronauts to the moon on a rocket built by NASA, which was led at the time by some questionable people. Then, we successfully landed the craft, essentially a tin can, bounced around on the moon, took some pictures, planted a flag, and came home. Then, despite the alleged narrative that there was nothing particularly promising about the moon, we sent guys up there a few more times, had some mission failures, and then more or less stopped cold. No more missions, no USA base on the moon, just 50 plus years of increasingly distant radio silence from our dreams to conquer space. And don't let NASA fool you. Every couple of years they say, we're gonna go back, we're gonna do it, we have these plans. It never happened. NASA claims we stopped sending our guys to the moon because of public disinterest, budget cuts, political shifts. The USA, and the US government in particular, has a long-standing obsession with being the world's powerhouse. Just look at the CIA, our military tech, and yes, of course, the Cold War space race. So the Cold War ended, and suddenly the US government stopped worrying about China, Russia, and all the other world powers beating us in tech, especially space tech. I don't think so. We still try to be the best and the first in every single way a civilization can accumulate power. And a monopoly on a huge satellite that looks down on the Earth sounds like a pretty powerful tool. Yet we appear to have just given up. And so did China and Russia. I think it's suspicious. And here's the conspiracy. What if we didn't actually lose interest? What if something scared us away? We arrived, as I mentioned earlier, in a tin can. If there was something sinister on the moon, we were already thousands of years behind them. And I know this sounds crazy, but this idea may not be as far-fetched as it sounds. Many astronauts over the years have given interviews where they talk around weird stuff they saw, anomalies, lights, crafts, even structures. There have also been mention of vibrations and weird signals coming from the moon, not only indicating that possibly the moon is hollow, whole nother video by itself, but that it might already be occupied. NASA's own mission logs have moments of radio blackout. Armstrong and Aldrin allegedly spoke to Houston on a private communication channel for 2 minutes during the first moonwalk. Why hasn't NASA disclosed what they discussed during those minutes? Then there's weird stuff seen on the moon's surface photos. NASA's archives have plenty of retouched or lost negatives from the Apollo mission. Entire rolls of film allegedly just gone, which honestly is probably the most believable thing about this story so far. It's NASA and the government after all. Now, when asked why, NASA said, and this is totally real, that they reused the tapes. NASA has us believe that they went to another celestial body for the first time in human history and then decided to record over it like it was this video's first draft. And so the result is we've had 0 manned missions beyond low Earth orbit since 1972. That's over 50 years. Every other tech and science industry has made huge leaps in that time, but NASA, once the collection of some of the world's brightest minds, they just stopped. And even, it seems, NASA has regressed in that time. Or we're to believe that the moon was so boring and empty of use that NASA and the world governments lost interest in returning. If that were true, why send anyone back after the first mission? Why even have return trips in 1969 and 1972 at all? So, with that framework, I kind of hope that we didn't actually go to the moon, and that maybe the Stanley Kubrick-directed Apollo missions was the real conspiracy. Because if we did go, I don't think we stopped going because NASA faced budget cuts. I think we stopped going because we found something so massive, so existentially terrifying, that every government agreed never to speak of it again. Let's get into the rankings. Likelihood, 1.5 out of 10. I don't think the evidence for the Stanley Kubrick theory is particularly strong. The evidence, both circumstantial and actual, that we went and found something already there, I think that's more plausible. So 1.5 out of 10. Cool factor, 3 out of 10. The only cool part about this theory that the moon missions were a big hoax is that the government and movie producers were able to convince the entire world that the moon landing was real, and that they actually filmed the whole thing in a studio somewhere. Oh, and that nothing sinister is actually on the moon. Upheaval score, 9 out of 10. This is the catch-22. If we didn't go, then I do think heads would roll, and our government, which no one trusts already, would look even worse. And if we found out that we stopped going because we found some crazy stuff up there, then literally everything would change. And with all these scenarios, there's only kind of scary options. So let's talk about Atlantis. The idea of Atlantis was brought into our current human knowledge thanks to Plato. Plato's Atlantis is detailed. He wrote about a great and wonderful empire that ruled over many islands and parts of the continent beyond the Atlantic Sea, from beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Plato described Atlantis as an island arranged in concentric rings of land and sea surrounding a central hill where the royal palace stood. The people of Atlantis were descendants of the god Poseidon, an immortal woman with whom he fathered sons, specifically the eldest son Atlas, who the civilization was named after. According to Plato, the Atlanteans lived in harmony with their divine nature, thriving on land, abundant in metals, specifically one metal which Plato said gleamed like fire. But like every other great civilization in history, Plato claimed that Atlantis became corrupted with greed and imperial ambition. And as a result, the gods punished Atlantis for its hubris. Quoting Plato, "The warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea." Plato wrote the way to the ocean from that sea was forever blocked with mud. But it's not just Plato. Others have mentioned a lost advanced civilization. In fact, many civilizations have similar myths of societies with great knowledge and technology who became lost. And here's where archaeology starts to flirt with conspiracy. There's evidence of massive floods around 12,000 years ago. This is known as the Younger Dryas event. It's the same time Atlantis supposedly vanished. From the Egyptians, to the Aztecs, to the Sumerians, who talked about sky gods who came down, built stuff, and then disappeared. Many supposedly unconnected cultures around the globe had these same flood myths that were said to have taken place around almost the exact same time. There are people who claim geological evidence of sunken land masses, or even something like Bimini Road, could be evidence that Atlantis existed. Also, the discovery of new sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is a 12,000-year-old temple complex, demonstrate that civilization keeps showing up earlier, bigger, and more advanced than we ever thought possible. Some Atlantis conspiracies go even further, suggesting that the reason Atlantis was so advanced was because they had help or origins that were not of this earth. And that could explain why Plato's story describes the Atlanteans as having godlike origins. Even the mythical metal that Plato discussed could suggest something extraterrestrial. Why else would it have gleamed like fire? So, what if Atlantis wasn't some random island, but a global civilization that existed before the Younger Dryas impact theory? Likelihood, 4.5 out of 10. Did Atlantis, specifically Atlantis, the futuristic megacity doomed for its sins, exist? Maybe. But were humans doing more advanced things than we give them credit for earlier than we give them credit for? 100%. Every year, our timeline of human history changes. Unfortunately, both modern and historical academics tend to relegate these ideas to pseudoscience and ignoring evidence. This hurts both our understanding of real history and our potential to uncover a secret history. But is it cool? It's awesome. 7 out of 10. Definitive proof that Atlantis existed would be great. But I have a feeling that any evidence would still somehow be heavily debated. And the chance of finding the key to Atlantis' story, the tech, really, somehow still intact, that's really low. Our evidence would be eroded by time. If it wasn't, though, if we somehow found some pristine artifact, something definitive that proves advanced technology, then the cool ranking would go even higher, closer to a 10. Upheaval score, 3 out of 10. Now, I wish this was higher, and if you disagree, tell me. But given that we uncover amazing things under layers of history and hardly anyone cares, I can see the same thing happening here, especially if there's nothing to affect our modern way of life. Total score, 14.5 out of 30. So let's move on to one that's a little more closer to our backyards, or specifically our forests. Bigfoots, and to some extent other cryptids. Most of us know at least one person obsessed with Bigfoot. In my case, it's my mom. And he, Bigfoot, not my mom, is everywhere. From bumper stickers, wood silhouettes propped up on the sides of homes, statues in quirky shops, we've all seen it. He's even made an appearance on the gambling scene. But besides being a staple of pop culture, he's actually one of the most enduring and multifaceted conspiracy theories in modern folklore. Before Bigfoot even got his name, large, hairy, human-like creatures appeared in indigenous myths and legends across North America. Stories of Sasquatch or Sasquatch from coastal tribes to spiritual wild men in the woods in British Columbia. There are even early colonial reports from settlers mentioning gorilla-like beings in the Pacific Northwest. Fast forward to 1958, and a man named Jerry Crew discovers the first physical evidence of Bigfoot. Crew claimed to have found large footprints in California, which he made plaster casts from and then took to the local newspaper. The paper was the first to actually dub the name Bigfoot. Later, it was admitted to be a hoax. Still, the name stuck, and modern-day Bigfoot was born. And of course, Bigfoot legends are all over the world. There's the Yeti in the Himalayas, Yowies in Australia, and even a skunk ape in Florida. But that could just be Florida. As a result, Bigfoot has fostered tons of conspiracy and cover-up theories. We have government suppression to avoid land use restrictions, because obviously Bigfoot is an endangered species. Then there's scientific gatekeeping conspiracies, connections to missing 411 cases, the list goes on. And the answer to all of them is, of course, Bigfoot. And here's my personal favorite, that Bigfoot is of interdimensional or extraterrestrial origin. I mean, if Bigfoot was an interdimensional being, it would explain how a large, hairy, ape-like creature could avoid discovery for so long. And connecting this even further, in the wake of the 1960s and 70s UFO sightings, people began reporting Bigfoot-like creatures seen alongside UFOs or shortly after seeing strange lights. There's even a theory that Bigfoot himself is a biologically engineered being used by aliens for reconnaissance or some sort of environmental monitoring. It's a long shot, but I like it. And it's hard to deny that if Bigfoot were real, it would be a pretty cool society-wide realization. Likelihood, though, it's probably a 2.5 out of 10. The points it actually gets here are from the collective stories and myths over time, and because I do want to support my mom's obsession. And the cool factor, though, is an 8 out of 10. I love the idea of giving credence to old stories, and it would be a huge win for the conspiracy theory community and all those hunters who came home with crazy stories that nobody ever believed. Upheaval, 6.5 out of 10. This really depends on what Bigfoot actually is. If it's just a truly undiscovered, undetected large primate, it would change some science, but otherwise everything would kind of stay the same in the world. Except maybe there would be a Bigfoot spray instead of bear spray, and the aisles at REI might change a bit. But if we found out that Bigfoot was an alien or an interdimensional creature, then we'd be looking at closer to a 10 out of 10 on the upheaval ranking. Number 3, 0-point energy. If there's one conspiracy theory that could actually redefine humanity, but that relatively few people are aware of, it's 0-point energy. It's one of those ideas that feels super impossible and also somehow inevitable at the same time. Let me explain. So the claim is simple, that even in a perfect vacuum where nothing should exist, there's still energy. Infinite, unending, and waiting energy. It's in quantum mechanics, and they call it the 0-point field. Particles appear and particles vanish. Energy flickers like static under everything we see. According to quantum mechanics, there's probably enough 0-point energy in a single cubic centimeter of vacuum space to boil all the oceans on Earth. And that's true in principle. Could humans create that without simultaneously ending the world? Well, since the early 1900s, inventors have shown up with machines that allegedly do draw energy from a vacuum. There's Tesla, of course. Tesla believed that the Earth itself was a conductor of limitless energy. Tesla built the Wardenclyffe Tower to transmit power wirelessly, and then, of course, was shut down before he could finish. And his papers, where he probably talked about all this stuff, confiscated by the government after his death. But it doesn't stop there. Throughout the decades, other researchers have popped up with their own breakthroughs. There's men who've claimed to have tapped into something that shouldn't exist. Whether that's invisible standing waves of energy or some sort of novel fusion, there's more than enough here to justify its own video. And maybe these things do exist. Maybe they're just classified. And if so, 0-point energy isn't theoretical, it's operational for someone. The defense contractors with their black budget programs, they probably already have it in that case. Anti-gravity, fueled propulsion, energy systems that don't need fuel could be there. And I guess the reason we're not seeing it in that situation is because the moment it does become public, the global economy collapses overnight. Or maybe someone else made this breakthrough, non-humans. Maybe if humans do have this, it's because we stumbled upon wreckage, and we've been trying to piece this puzzle together for decades. Many witnesses, especially from military backgrounds, have described crafts that move in ways conventional physics can't explain. No propulsion, no sound, no heat signature. Which puts us at two roads. Either it's human or it's extraterrestrial. If it's human, if we found wreckage or if somebody in some black budget program did discover this, It means that we have lived a century in the shadow of something we were never meant to control. Infinite clean energy would be the most single, liberating discovery in human history, and also the most destabilizing. Still, I want this to be true more than almost any other, because if it is, we're not as powerless as we think we are. We've just been told that we are. Likelihood, 4 out of 10. There's measurable evidence that the vacuum where we think no energy isn't empty. But turning that into usable energy remains theoretical. Still, there's a trail of silenced inventors, classified patents, and quietly vanishing research that keeps the door open to this idea. And by the way, this is just humans for that 4 out of 10. From my own experience, the one in Kansas, the one I'll tell you about more later, that tells me someone out there has made something close to this. And cool factor, 10 out of 10. It's transcendently cool to think about zero-point energy being real. It's the kind of truth that could unify science and conspiracy in an undeniable way, forever changing the world, which is why the upheaval score is also an easy 10 out of 10. If zero-point energy was real, every structure of control humanity's ever built would evaporate. Governments, economies, every hierarchy, all of them rendered obsolete. But what comes after? There, I have no idea. Because it's the ultimate battle between endless potential for power and endless potential for freedom. Total score, 24 out of 30. Okay, moving on to the top 2. We've got remote viewing. This is going to be a bit of a shorter one. So, it seems to me that if you bring up remote viewing, people either know exactly what you're talking about, or you've just committed yourself to an hour of reminding someone over and over who Ingo Swann was. But to boil this down a lot, remote viewing is the active harnessing and training and tapping into our own psychic capabilities to see things in other places and maybe even in other times. And that's an awesome concept. And from a fundamental human level, I think it's conceivable, especially if you've ever had those moments of deja vu or ever had a sixth sense telling you something was going to happen before it did. I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's happened to me. And what that means is that we humans can tap into something that no science could ever explain. So, of course, American and Russian intel has been all over this idea for decades. And there is evidence that the CIA really did employ, or maybe still does use, trained remote viewers to spy for us, which means that the likelihood of remote viewing being a real thing is a 9 out of 10. I find it difficult to believe that the world's most powerful governments would spend years on this stuff if it didn't actually yield real results. And that's cool as hell. Like an 8 out of 10, cool as hell. Only losing points because it would not be so cool if only the Russians and the CIA were using this for war and to spy on us. If tomorrow, the remote viewing program was proven to be fact, the world would change overnight. Our idea of consciousness, human capability, philosophy, government, and even religion would alter. New chapters of humanity would be written. Sure, you're still driving to work without a water-powered fuel cell, but with enough training, maybe you can use your lunch break to tap into Stanley Meyer's long-lost or long-hidden patents. Upheaval score, a big 8 out of 10 for a total score of 25 out of 30. Okay, number 1, aliens. It's all led to this. And I think it's at this point that I need to finish my story. So let's recap. 4 a.m., nobody's around, rural Kansas, crazy light appears in the middle of the sky and then rockets off. And remember, I'm using the term rocket only to describe the type of speed that I was unable to truly comprehend. I think we left the story with me slamming on the brakes, which of course woke my girlfriend up. And there, stopped in the middle of the highway, I started telling her everything that I'd just seen, everything that I just told you. Thankfully, she was great. She listened and said, "We'll figure this out, but first drive, there's somebody behind us." And I thought that was weird. We were just alone on this road. We had been alone for probably the last 20 to 30 minutes. But she was right. Right behind us was a car's headlights, moving closer. So I drove, still frantically talking about what I had just witnessed. And I know this is going to sound really damn cliche, but we were literally running out of gas. We had maybe 20, 25 miles of gas left in our tank. My girlfriend navigated us to the nearest gas station, which was a Sinclair. It was about 5 minutes up the road, and so we went. During that drive, she was kind enough to pull up pictures of Starlink, a meteor shower, shooting stars, all in an attempt to find a quick and rational explanation for what I'd seen. But it wasn't any of those things. I also noticed that the car that had seemingly come out of nowhere was gone. No more headlights behind us, which was weird because I could not for the life of me remember any turnoff. But in that moment, I really didn't think about it too closely, and if I would have, I honestly probably would have thought it was a farmer driving into his field or something like that. So we made it to Sinclair, which was on the left side of the 2-lane divided highway we had been driving on. And just so you know, the Sinclair was closed other than the pumps. Nobody was working there and nobody was around. I turned in, got out of the car, and when I got out, I was visibly shaking. Was it the cold? A little. Was it the weirdness of seeing that thing in the sky? Definitely. But I got out anyway and proceeded to attempt to pump some gas. And of course, the machine was going in circles, just saying authorizing. It was at this point that I see coming from the same direction that we were just going, a car, or more accurately, the car. The headlights were on this time, and it slowly came toward us, and as it got closer, about 50 feet away, in the westward heading lane, the car angled in the middle of the road to face us and stopped. I guess in that moment we were in a bit of a stare-off. Or more accurately, the car was in a bit of a stare-off with us, as my girlfriend said, "What the hell is going on?" I said, "I have no idea what's going on." I quickly decided to cancel the transaction and get in the car. Now, once in the car, we sat there and watched this other car, but we could not see much. Its headlights were on. All we could really tell was that it was a black sedan. I don't even remember if it had plates or not. A few minutes passed, and at this point, we discussed driving away in the other direction, maybe having a 20-mile chase with the gas we had left, but it didn't matter. After about 3 minutes, the car, which was still in the road facing us, hadn't moved, simply drove away. We had no idea why. And then, about 30 seconds later, I saw the lights emerge of a large semi-truck. This black sedan, which had been staring us down, which I do believe had followed us from my initial encounter, somehow knew that that semi-truck was coming long before we ever saw it. Needless to say, we ended up getting gas somewhere else and made it to our destination safe and unharmed. Now that encounter was an experience, or more accurately, an ordeal. And the best word I have to describe it was sinister. And since then, I've gone back and forth trying to explain every aspect of that encounter. And of course, for this video, I could have talked about any of the thousands of credible UFO, UAP, and alien experiences that people have had, ranging from uplifting, life-changing, soul-enhancing experiences to the downright terrifying. But I decided to tell you my story. And I hope to God that my story is a one-off, a product of some sort of cosmic mutual apprehension, and that in reality, the aliens, or whatever is most certainly here, is, for a lack of a better word, nice. Because if so, that would earn a perfect rating, 30 out of 30. And because if not, humanity would feel like us that night. Intimidated kids in the middle of nowhere, with no power, having just witnessed a terrifying miracle. Thank you so much for making it this far. If you enjoyed this video, then subscribe. And if you have anything you'd like me to cover, just drop it in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.